Hello there guys, and welcome to another one of my reviews. Today I am in Munich, I am in Bavaria, in Germany, and I am test driving a 1959 Mini Cooper 850. Actually, this is a Morris Mini. Initially the Cooper was the Mini was built under the Morris name, but let's not get lost in details. This year the Mini brand turns 60, and they invited me over to drive the original Cooper, the original Mini, and this is it. This is a 1959 car. It's one of the first ever produced, and I have to say from the get-go, it's freaking amazing. It's not that fast, but it's analog, which is absolutely great these days. It's a refreshing breath of air in this autonomous future we're living in. Everything has to be autonomous these days. Everything has to be comfortable, everything has to be as smooth as possible. But this car is taking it all back to its roots. So let's talk about it for a second. Let's talk about its history first, because this car was brought out in 1959. It was designed in the 1950s, and you can see that throughout the car. That's because everything in it is minimalistic. It is made to be as efficient as possible, as to consume as little resources as possible. You must keep in mind that during the 50s, Europe was recovering from the Second World War, and that meant resources were scarce. So you didn't have a lot of steel, you didn't have a lot of materials, textile materials, you didn't have leather, you didn't have a lot of things we take for granted these days. So people had to get creative. So that's where the brilliant mind of Alex Isigonis, the man who designed this car, comes into play, because he created it to be built with as little resources as possible. So if you take a look inside, you'll notice you only have the bare minimum, and I do mean the bare minimum. You have a huge dial in the middle, which is basically a speedometer and a fuel gauge, and that's about it. You have 3 lights in it. One of them is for the ignition, one of them is for the oil, and one of them is for the high beam. That's it. Under it you have a shelf where you can basically deposit stuff, and 5 buttons. There is one for the heater, one for the lights, one for the ignition, one for the wipers, and one for the choke, which is basically a way of getting more fuel to the engine when starting it up cold. That's about it. You also have like a hazard light, a hazard button, and a signal stalk on the steering wheel column. Even the steering wheel is so minimalistic. It's big because you don't have power steering in this car, so you need a rather big wheel in order to make sure it's not hard to drive this car, even though I have to remind you that this is riding on 10-inch wheels. So yeah, 10 inches. I've never seen a car with wheels this small, so it's really not that hard to turn the wheels, because the car is light and the wheels are very, very small. Also inside, you're gonna notice there's no mechanism for rolling down the window. You only have this edge here, which has holes in it, so you can adjust the window according to your preference and hook it in place. The door lever is a small aluminum part which you can pull and open the door. Everything is reduced to the bare minimum. But even though the car is very small and it has a very small engine, an 850cc engine, you have a lot of space inside. I can't believe I actually fit in here with no issues whatsoever, and I'm pretty sure I could fit another 3 guys just like myself in here with no issues whatsoever. It is amazing how well Sir Isigonis designed this car, and it is so well deserved that he got knighted for his contribution to the automotive realm. I mean, this thing is absolutely mind-blowing. It can also be very fast like it is right now. I'm breaking the speed limit, but I'm going downhill, don't worry about it. That's why I'm going so fast. So, getting back to the minimalism of this car, you only get one sun visor for the driver. After all, the passenger doesn't really need to have a sun visor. The driver needs to make sure he's not blinded, but that's about it. You only get a really small rear view mirror right here in the center. It's basically as big as an iPhone SE. You get a really small left side rear view mirror, because on the right side you have no mirror. I don't know exactly if that's just to save costs, or they deemed it's not really needed. I have to say that fixing the the left side mirror is quite tricky, because you have to get out, adjust it, get back in, see if it's okay, then get out, adjust it again. So switching drivers in this car is not as easy as it is in modern cars. Also, the floor pans are really thin. You can hear the you can hear actually the sheet metal whenever you put your foot down. It's really funny. You feel like it's gonna break off at any moment now. As a matter of fact, the gear shift lever is going through a hole in the floor and then up to the gearbox, and that hole is pretty wide. I'm sure that if I hit like a water hole, I'm gonna get sprayed. But it's all fun and games. Speaking of the floor pan, the pedals are extremely small as well, and I think I just invented, I'm not the first one to notice this, but I think I invented the Tiptoe driving style, because I'm driving with my toes. I have to take my shoes off in order to be able to stick my foot between the acceleration pedal and the gear shift lever. The pedals are really close to each other, and there's very little space between the gear shift lever and the acceleration pedal. But how does it feel to drive it? Well, it's fun. It's fun because it's light, and it has plenty of power for its weight. But not only that, but the engine was mounted really low and in between the wheels. And what that means is that you have a lot of grip on the front end, and the car has a low center of gravity. That translates into that famous go-kart feel everybody keeps talking about when discussing how a Mini drives. And yes, I can confirm it does feel like a go-kart with 4 seats and the roof. So it's really fun to drive. It's really light, and you can toss it in a corner without fear of losing control. That's because the front end has a lot of grip. Well, for a car of this size anyway. And the rear end doesn't. So you can basically drift this car. I mean, I think you've seen videos online of Minis in the various competitions where they actually drift along corners because they're so light, and you just point the front end in the direction you want to go, and you're basically going sideways, and it's really good fun to drive. It's also this analog feel because you don't have power steering, you don't have power brakes. Yeah, you have a manual gearbox that sometimes doesn't want to work with you, but it's all of this sensation inside. You feel the petrol burning because this is a carbureted engine, and you can feel the exhaust fumes coming inside the cabin. But it doesn't bother you at all because this is part of the experience. This car has a lot of patina, and it's really nice. I wish you guys were here with me to smell it and to feel and to hear the engine. It's quite an experience. So now I have turned into a believer. I love the Mini Cooper, and now I understand why it has such a good reputation as a fun car. because it's small and it's really easy to toss around. That being said, this has been my review of a 1959 Mini, Morris Mini. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm sure there have been some mistakes in this video. Didn't have a lot of time with the car, but I wanted to share this experience with you. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, of course.